Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving headfirst into one of the most anticipated and frankly most chaotic corporate overhauls in modern elite sport.
Has to be.
We are talking about Manchester United, and the buzzword bingo around Old Trafford right now is at an absolute fever pitch. You've got revolution, high performance, AI, F1 gurus, and a total structural transformation.
It sounds like the necessary consequence of a decade of strategic failure, doesn't it? This is the sound of new management, driven by the influence of INEOS, trying to fundamentally reset the DNA of the club.
Exactly.
They're tearing down the old walls of, reactive, expensive, and just dysfunctional recruitment and trying to replace it with a structure that is sleek, fast, repeatable, and critically driven by data science.
Exactly. Our stack of sources today is utterly fascinating because it does two things. First, it meticulously details the nuts and bolts of these internal changes, who's coming in, what tech they're using, and the new philosophy behind a £50 million infrastructure investment.
And the second thing,
Second, and maybe more entertainingly, it gives us a deep, raw look at the highly skeptical, sometimes humorous, and just deeply split reaction from the dedicated fan base online who have been burned by far too many promises before.
right, so our mission for you, the listener, is comprehensive. We need to go beyond the headlines. You need to walk away understanding the full, intricate scope of this new data-driven process. We need to define what this F1 influence actually means in practical terms for finding players, clarify the new management hierarchy, and critically analyze why the fan base is already struggling to decide if this is a genuine step forward or just, as one comment put it, corporate fake buzzword nonsense designed to distract from the current poor performances.
The stage is set. Manchester United is trying to build a new world at Carrington, driven by data and speed. And the very first major area of attack, the place where all this investment has to show immediate returns, is the transfer market. Let's dive into how they plan to achieve that efficiency.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the core strategic shift, because this really is the headline. The sources describe a fundamental change in scouting philosophy. The goal is a recruitment team that is leaner and, crucially, much more efficient and proactive than its predecessors. How mechanistically are they actually achieving this efficiency?
It all comes down to the complete integration of disparate systems, which frankly is a concept Manchester United has historically failed to grasp. In the past, recruitment was often a battle, or at least a highly inefficient relay race, between the traditional scouts, the guys on the ground watching players in obscure leagues, and the analytics department, which might have been siloed in a different building or reporting to a completely different chain of command.
Right, completely separate worlds.
Exactly. The new aim is explicitly to combine information gathered in the field with data-driven analytics in a shared unified structure.
And this is where the technology edge comes in. We're not talking about just filtering players by goals and assists in a generic spreadsheet. The network is described as increasingly utilizing artificial intelligence, which is a critical element distinguishing this new era from the Woodward and Arnold years. But we need to define that AI. What precisely is it doing?
Well, the AI in this context is primarily about pattern recognition and predictive modeling. It's designed to flag players who meet highly specific, quantifiable metrics that often correlate with future success in a higher-level league.
So things you can't just see with the naked eye.
Precisely. Perhaps players who excel in certain progressive passing metrics adjusted for opponent quality, or defensive duels won in the final third, regardless of how visible their league is. Crucially, it identifies undervalued assets. The AI provides the raw, objective data screen, allowing the human scouts to then focus their limited time and resources on the most expensive and time-consuming part of recruitment, assessing character, temperament, and tactical fit.
So it's not replacing the human scout, it's optimizing their flight schedule. One source noted the view that AI is there to optimize scouting, to identify opportunities for human scouts to assess, rather than eliminating them entirely.
Exactly. It's a force multiplier. But to make that optimization effective, you need a system designed for high-velocity decision-making. And here's where we finally get to that F1 connection.
The buzzword.
The buzzword, yeah. We keep hearing about the influence of the F1 guru, a guy called Sansoni, who is credited with taking the data operation to a new level. What does the Formula One discipline of data sophistication bring to football recruitment that was previously lacking?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the link isn't just a catchy PR phrase. Formula One teams operate on the premise that every millisecond and every ounce of efficiency matters.
It's the classic philosophy of marginal gains.
Exactly. The goal is to standardize assessment. Sansoni's mandate is to create better alignment between the senior scouting department and the emerging talent scouting department.
And that standardization is the key takeaway for you, the listener. In essence, they are implementing a unified data language. This means a top prospect identified at the youth level in South America must be assessed using the exact same metrics and assessment criteria as a senior target in the Bundesliga.
Okay, can we get specific? What would that common data language actually look like in practice?
It moves beyond simple observation. For instance, both departments are now scoring players on a shared weighted metric for something like off-ball movement efficiency or press resistance under pressure metrics, derived not from simple match stats, but from complex tracking data. This instantly allows the system to compare a 16-year-old winger in the Americas to a 25-year-old senior target in Europe. This unified scoring system reduces internal friction, it eliminates subjective departmental biases, and, critically, it speeds up the decision process, which is vital in a transfer market where missing out by a few days can cost you tens of millions.
That makes perfect sense. In F1, if the telemetry suggests a wing adjustment will save 0.05 seconds, you make the adjustment immediately. In football, if the data suggests a player profile is a 9 out of 10 fit, you need to execute the transfer before a competitor drives up the price.
Exactly right.
Moving from the philosophy to the personnel, this streamlined structure required some serious reinforcement at the top.
Absolutely. The main structural change is the appointment of Kyle McCauley as head of senior scouting starting on January 5th. This is an important strategic detail because McCauley previously worked with Vavell at Chelsea.
Right, I remember that.
That background is a direct link to modern, continental, data-driven recruitment practices that have proven successful at high-volume global clubs. It signals a fundamental departure from relying solely on established agents or old-school networks.
So, what specific philosophy do these modern continental practices actually entail, and why should we care about the Macaulay-Vavell connection?
It's about science over reputation. These practices typically rely heavily on sophisticated software tools, focusing on undervaluation metrics. Instead of scouting a player purely based on their reputation in a top league, they look for players in transition leagues who score highly on key metrics, but are currently undervalued by the market. Macaulay's presence implies a shift towards identifying talent 12 to 18 months before they hit peak market price.
Which is essential if you're trying to catch up to financial behemoths like Manchester City or Real Madrid.
It's the only way.
But wait, if the problem was multi-layered dysfunction scouting, negotiation, and overall bureaucratic inertia, how does keeping some of the old guard not raise massive questions? I'm thinking specifically about the business side.
That's a critical point. While INEOS is overhauling the identification process, they are maintaining institutional knowledge in the execution phase. Matt Hargreaves, the director of football negotiations, is specifically noted as one of the few existing executives to have survived the Radcliffe cull.
Why Hargreaves? Does INEOS truly believe the old negotiation team was flawless, or is this just a necessary compromise to maintain continuity while the rest of the structure is being built?
It appears to be a vote of confidence in his commercial and negotiation skills specifically. It suggests that INEOS assessed the transfer failures not in the closing of the deals, which Hargreaves managed, but in the speed of identification and the quality of the targets presented to him.
Okay.
They trust him to secure the deal efficiently once the new data-driven system delivers the target. It's a massive gamble, though, linking a new engine, the scouting and data, to an existing transmission, which is the negotiation and commercial side.
This brings us directly to the shifting transfer philosophy, which is the practical application of this newfound speed. The club's new approach is clear. Move quickly on targets to get ahead of rivals and prevent costs from spiraling, a direct contrast to previous regimes which were often accused of debuting until the price became astronomical and non-negotiable.
They want to operate with surgical precision, reducing the noise and the opportunity for competitors to intervene. And we see this commitment reflected clearly in their proposed January window strategy. The source material states emphatically that if United enters the transfer market in January, it will not be for reactive panic buys.
Oh, that's a big
A
statement.
huge one. Instead, it will be to accelerate a deal that was already planned for the summer.
Accelerating a summer deal in January, that's a huge statement of intent. It means they're aiming to secure targets 6 months early.
Absolutely. This shows a strategic forward-looking intent rather than a reactive one, but it also confirms the required level of organization. You can only accelerate a deal if the target has been fully assessed, financially modeled, and signed off by everyone, from the manager to the Utd, months in advance.
Right.
It turns recruitment from an emergency reactive operation into a planned, repeatable process, mimicking the long-term strategic planning you see in F1 development cycles.
And that planning has to start right at the grassroots. You can't build a sustainable high-performance environment if your youth recruitment is still operating on a hunch and a handshake. This leads us perfectly into the second part of the overhaul, the infrastructure designed to integrate this new philosophy. Let's follow that pipeline down to the grassroots, because the emerging talent department has seen a major overhaul, reinforcing the idea that this is a total systemic change, not just about buying a new center back next summer. This is about securing the next decade of talent.
The focus here is finding the next generation early and integrating them swiftly. The sheer size of the operation has been restructured to be more focused. The department is now structured with 3 regional leads, focusing specifically on the UK, Europe, and the Americas. This suggests a highly segmented approach to global scouting.
The UK and Europe are standard, of course, but why the specific named focus on the Americas? What does that signal about the strategy?
It highlights a deliberate shift towards exploring markets, historically less exploited by United's previous regimes, which often focused on Western Europe. The Americas focus, particularly South and Central America, points towards that untapped market potential we mentioned.
Finding younger, cheaper, high-potential players.
Exactly, before they attract the attention of the European superclubs or before they move to Portugal or Spain first, where their price is already inflated. It's a direct effort to improve their return on investment on youth scouting.
And we are already seeing the early, tangible results of this focus, which is a key measure of success for any new regime. The sources mention specific high-profile youth signings that have resulted from this approach, like Chido Obi, Aiden Heaven, and Diego Leon.
And the detail about Christian Orozco is particularly telling. Orozco, who arrived for a reported £1 million move from Colombian club Fortaleza, was given a full tour of the club ahead of his signing.
Okay, the red carpet treatment.
The full red carpet experience for a relatively modest youth signing from an emerging market. That detail demonstrates the seriousness and professionalism of the new recruitment effort in that specific region. It speaks to the commitment of making the club feel like the destination of choice, even for young international talent, right from the first interaction.
But bringing them in is only half the battle. If they arrive and are then immediately siloed in the academy building, separated physically and culturally from the elite environment, the investment is wasted. This is why the physical, cultural changes at Carrington become incredibly important. Tell us about the £50 million Carrington upgrade.
This is more than just new paint. It's a massive investment in cultural engineering designed to eliminate internal barriers. The biggest change is the emerging talent dressing room.
The bespoke dressing room, built in the first team building.
Exactly. It includes lockers and showers for young newcomers, the Tyler Fredricksons and Shea Laces of the academy, as well as fringe squad members. The critical defining detail is that this allows them to change, eat meals, and receive treatment alongside the senior players.
That is integration, not segregation. You are deliberately breaking down the physical barriers that historically separate the youth academy from the senior elite. Psychologically, what does this achieve?
It creates an immediate, seamless cultural pathway. A 16-year-old coming in for a session doesn't just watch the seniors from a distance. They are sharing a treatment table with the captain, seeing what Marcus Rashford eats for lunch, and observing the professional routines of their heroes up close.
Right.
It instantly accelerates their integration into the high-performance environment. It sends a powerful, nonverbal message. You are part of the senior environment from day one, and you must behave accordingly.
And the renovation extends beyond the dressing rooms. The flow of information is also being physically engineered.
Correct. The overall revamp was designed to create a better flow between all operational departments. An open plan layout upstairs now allows the manager and his staff, the football people, to work more closely, side by side with the data analysis and recruitment teams. It literally forces the different operational heads to be in the same space, constantly talking, constantly challenging each other with data, eliminating the ability to retreat into separate informational silos.
You cannot accuse them of working in silos anymore if the architecture literally prevents it. But let's move to perhaps the most quoted and debated element of this cultural shift, the ultimate human filter, the noteheads policy.
Yes, the specific blunt language used by INEOS insiders regarding the recruitment policy is precisely that, a no-heads policy. It's the clearest, simplest way to communicate a non-negotiable focus on character assessment that transcends technical talent.
Why is such a policy explicitly needed now? It sounds obvious that you shouldn't sign difficult players, but the fact it needs to be an explicit headline policy suggests a reaction to significant past failures.
It suggests that the new leadership recognizes that talent alone has failed them repeatedly and disastrously. Over the last few years, the club has signed highly talented players who, for one reason or another, attitude issues, cultural friction, disciplinary problems, introduced toxicity, or significantly disrupted the squad dynamic. This policy is a direct result of those financial and cultural hits.
I recall one fan comment mentioning this, arguing that United supposedly had a similar note heads policy under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and that didn't exactly pan out, citing the public issues surrounding players like Sancho.
That's a stark reminder that policy on paper is different from policy in practice. The source material suggests this rule existed before, but perhaps wasn't enforced strongly enough, or the character assessment wasn't rigorous enough. This current iteration seems to be an explicit acknowledgement that future recruits must not only fit the tactile profile identified by the AI, but also the emotional and cultural profile of the high-performance environment they are desperately trying to engineer.
But how does a multi-million-pound club actually enforce a no-heads rule during a background check? What behavioral metrics are they looking for?
Well, this moves into the realm of advanced psychological and social profiling, often led by sports psychologists and embedded scouts. It goes beyond just asking former managers. They are looking for verifiable evidence of attitude.
So, digging depth.
Really deep. This could involve interviewing multiple tangential contacts, not just the agent and the coach, but former academy staff, teammates, and support staff, focusing on how the player reacts to failure, criticism, or being benched. They are looking for signs of humility, willingness to adhere to team standards, and a demonstrable work ethic that won't pollute the integrated culture they're building at Carrington.
So it's about mitigating risk. Character issues are a massive, costly risk. The no-heads rule is the cultural guardrail. It's the human filter applied after the data identifies the talent. It ensures that the millions spent are invested in people who will actively contribute, not detract. It's the final, crucial human check on the cold data.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because you can have the best data algorithm in the world, but if the player it identifies refuses to integrate into the team dynamic, the entire massive investment, the 50 million pound upgrade, the F1 data system, is instantly wasted.
This brings us to the ground level, where the rubber meets the road, the fan reaction. When news like this drops, high performance, AI, F1 gurus, it immediately generates excitement and deep, bitter cynicism in equal measure. Right now, reading the sources, the cynicism seems to be winning the day.
You can absolutely understand why. The immediate perception among the dedicated community is that this news is nothing more than a carefully orchestrated PR puff piece or corporate fake buzzword nonsense.
Right.
And the timing, as one source pointed out, seems right on cue, especially when Director of Football Wilcox was reportedly getting heat following a string of poor results.
The optics are difficult to manage. Like, we're sitting 8th or 12th in the league, depending on the week, but hey, check out our new revolutionary algorithm. The incident at Selhurst Park, where the director of football urged journalists to trust the process after a shaky win over Crystal Palace, really cemented this deep-seated skepticism.
That phrase, trust the process, has become completely synonymous with managerial or organizational assurances that have repeatedly failed to deliver at the club over the last decade. It's almost a traumatic trigger for the fan base. They immediately compared this to previous manager assurances like, "We stick to the plan," which often preceded poor spells of form. It triggers a strong negative emotional response because they've been sold grand plans before that dissolved into expensive mediocrity.
It's the results versus rhetoric divide, and it's enormous. The sources highlight the fans' immediate critical assessment of current results against the high-performance talk. When the club is mid-table, the most sophisticated data system in the world sounds like a distraction, not a solution.
Performance is the only currency that matters to the supporter. It's incredibly difficult to swallow slick corporate rhetoric when the team is struggling for European qualification. Furthermore, fans are very astute about looking at INEOS's wider portfolio.
Oh, that's a good point.
They note that the results at other INEOS-owned clubs, such as Nice sitting 11th in League One and Lausanne 8th in Switzerland, do not yet back up the big talk of instant high performance.
That's a crucial counterpoint. It suggests that the INEOS model, while theoretically sound, might have a much longer gestation period than the impatient United fan base is willing to accept, or that perhaps the model itself isn't the magic bullet it's presented as.
It creates a powerful doubt. If the high-performance process isn't yielding results in Nice, a club under less pressure and scrutiny, why should it miraculously fix the deep-seated issues at United overnight? It validates the skepticism that this is a slow, multi-year plan, but one that is being sold with immediate revolutionary language.
Let's delve into the specific tensions around technology. The debate over AI versus the human element. It's not a simple acceptance or rejection of data. It's a nuanced argument rooted in historical grievances.
Absolutely. The pro-tech view is entirely reasonable. For this camp, the changes are good news and welcome news, considering the disastrous recruitment policy over the last few years. They see AI as an essential tool for optimizing scouting, identifying opportunities that human scouts can then verify. They see it as a necessary evolution away from the reactive, panicked spending of the past, viewing the technology as an impartial corrective.
But the traditional, or perhaps skeptical view, counters this with painful historical memory, and this is where the real nuance lies. They recall that United's traditional scouting was often strong, with capable people identifying generational talents. The problem was that higher-ups never actually listened.
This is the central historical grievance that colors the current skepticism. They cite specific, painful examples of missed targets. Holland, Bellingham, Caicedo, and Upamecano, all players the club reportedly scouted well, only for poor executive leadership to mess up the transfers, usually through dithering or being outbid.
This raises an important, critical question for the new regime. If the human scouts were already doing their job well enough to flag those generational talents, was the problem really the identification process or the bureaucratic structure that failed to act decisively on the high-quality information?
Exactly. If the structural failure was the inability of the leadership to act on good information, replacing the traditional scouting network with AI might just be creating a more expensive source of information that will also be ignored by the next layer of management.
Right.
These traditionalists are concerned that the worldwide network of human scouts has been decimated by the redundancies, fearing that AI might replace the vital intuition and contextual knowledge that traditional scouting provides.
They fear swapping competent but ignored human input for potentially incompetent or generic machine input, only to see the same outcome. The decision makers at the top failing to pull the trigger. It's the ultimate paradox. The club needs technology to move fast, but fans fear that in chasing the new, they are discarding the few elements that were actually working well historically.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the youth system paradox. Despite the chaos at the senior level, the existing youth system has been undeniably successful. The cohort that included Garnacho, Mainu, and Alvaro won the FA Youth Cup in 21-22. This existing success provides a massive, vital glimmer of hope and an undeniable supply chain of talent.
Yet it's also a point of anxiety for the fans. As one source noted, how many of these top talents, like JJ Gabriel, will want to stay if the first team doesn't progress? If the shiny new data-driven recruitment brings in mediocre external signings, it could block the pathway for proven academy gems, causing them to look elsewhere.
That's the critical tightrope the new recruitment department must walk. The policy must be surgically precise. It can't just identify external players. It must identify external players who are demonstrably and significantly better than the high-quality internal talent pool they already possess.
Right.
If the new data revolution fails to account for the homegrown quality, they risk wasting both the new process and the best part of the old one by driving away future stars.
So the data system doesn't just need to find talent. It needs to find talent so compelling that it forces the young stars to raise their game rather than simply replacing them with an expensive import.
That's the challenge.
Now let's pivot to perhaps the most entertaining and insightful element of the source material. The deep irony found in the discussions about what generic, publicly available AI suggests for United's recruitment. This section provides a vital contrast between the general buzzword AI and the sophisticated proprietary system United is building.
This section is pure, unadulterated comedy gold, but it serves a serious purpose. When users asked models like ChatGPT who United should buy, the results were hilariously unrealistic, serving as a perfect foil to highlight the difference between general-purpose models and specialized football analytics.
Absolutely. The truly unrealistic names generated were a legendary, chronologically confused all-star team.
Yeah.
Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lewandowski, Zidane, Xavi, Iniesta, Maldini, Baresi, Roberto Carlos, Lam, and Manuel Neuer.
It's just a list of legends.
One user, exasperated, even asked if the AI wanted them to construct a World Cup squad or a Champions League final team.
The chronological confusion is my favorite part. One user asked for 10 strikers under the age of 25, and the AI, presumably pulling from historical success data regardless of current status, suggested Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Incredible.
Another user was recommended Sergio Ramos as an inexpensive yet solid option at the back, with a year left on his contract at Madrid, completely ignoring the current reality that Ramos hasn't been at Madrid for years.
And the obvious suggestions are equally unhelpful, perfectly embodying the pointlessness of basic AI for this task. There was the perfect summary comment from a fan who obviously plays football management games. My FM scouts recommending Ronaldo as a great addition to the team, no shit Sherlock.
This humorous feedback underscores the fans' inherent skepticism about any AI involvement, even though the specialized system United is implementing is clearly far superior to a large language model. It shows that the club has a massive PR hurdle. They need to prove that their technology is genuinely insightful, that it's finding the next N'Golo Kante from a forgotten league, not just providing suggestions that any armchair pundit or football manager user could produce.
The sources move quickly from the AI jokes to the much more serious scrutiny of real or rumored targets linked to this new data-driven regime. This is where the fan base really gets divided because they start applying the trust the process skepticism to actual names. Players like Sesko, Ugarte, Cunha, Mbemo, Delap, Gyökeres, and Gallagher.
The reaction to Benjamin Sesko is a perfect microcosm of the confusion caused by mixing AI talk with real targets. The AI even suggested him at one point, which led to immediate fan debate. Did the sophisticated system flag him, or was this just a coincidence?
Yeah.
Others immediately questioned whether pursuing him was completely unrealistic because of his perceived price tag or allegiance to other clubs. It shows how intertwined the tech talk and the transfer rumors become in the fan psyche.
And the debates around the proposed striking options, specifically Delap and Gyökeres, were intense. This isn't just about talent, it's about perceived bias.
Sources highlight a significant divide. There was massive fan division on whether Delap was absolutely rubbish or merely a decent backup striker. Meanwhile, Gyökeres was identified as likely being a strong target, potentially Amorim's first choice, which links back to the managerial preference rather than pure data identification.
But the debate around Delap highlighted the most significant critical fear of the new regime. The director of football, the human decision maker, may be overlooking better players already at the club or ignoring the data in favor of players who worked with before or who fit his specific personal network.
That is the wider implication critique, which touches on the failure to learn from the club's recent history. One fan comment explicitly made the parallel. Getting rid of Hodgland to sign Delap would be like getting rid of McTominay to sign Ugarte all over again.
That comparison is deeply cynical but highly illustrative. It suggests a fear that this new, shiny process, overseen by new personnel, will still suffer from the same old human biases. Prioritizing past relationships, familiar names, or the Dace's personal preference over genuinely objective data or recognizing internal talent.
If the data revolution only leads to the same type of signings that previous regimes made, players based on familiarity rather than objective, cutting-edge analysis, then the fans' trust will completely collapse. It implies that the devil's listening capabilities, his ability to internalize and act on the AI-generated insight, are far more important than the AI suggesting capabilities.
And that takes us full circle back to the football heads who previously failed to listen to their own human scouts regarding players like Bellingham and Haaland. The technology might successfully identify the talent, but if the new decision makers have their own agendas or favor their own contacts, the data system is ultimately meaningless. The success or failure of this massive organizational shift relies not on the sophistication of the code, but on the integrity and humility of the humans running it. So what does this monumental shift all mean for you, the listener? Let's synthesize the main takeaway. Manchester United is betting big, investing tens of millions in structure, technology, and culture, the F1 data influence, the integrated facilities, and that necessary no-heads rule to finally end years of chaotic reactive recruitment.
The evidence of genuine systemic change is undeniable. The infrastructure is being put in place, from the regional scouting leads and the quick-draw transfer philosophy, right down to the integrated dressing room. However, the results on the pitch are lagging severely, creating a palpable crisis of trust among the fans who view this highly corporate presentation as a slick PR shield for current mediocrity.
It's fascinating to witness this tension between the slick corporate presentation of efficiency and the raw, frustrated emotion of the supporters who are tired of being told to trust the process while their team is sitting mid-table. The goal is clear: to establish efficiency, speed, and objective decision-making in transfers.
What's fascinating here is that the ultimate test isn't the sophistication of the technology, it's whether the football heads at the top, the directors of football and the manager, listen to the unbiased data and act decisively, a problem that plagued the club even when they did scout well traditionally. The success of this revolution hinges entirely on overcoming human egos and managerial biases, ensuring the data truly drives the decision, not just validates a pre-existing preference.
This attempt to supercharge recruitment using AI and F1 data analysis is revolutionary for a club of this size and legacy, forcing a cultural change that has been avoided for too long. But here is the final provocative thought for you to mull over until our next deep dive. If the data-driven recruitment system is wildly successful and they acquire the right high-character players, what happens if the manager still can't get the team to perform? Does the process ever override the people? If the structure is perfect but the results are still poor, who gets the blame, and can the new process survive a sustained period of failure? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.